What we will reveal here is of profound importance to mankind, both now and in the future. Truths have been hidden from us for hundreds of years. Few have glimpsed the secrets that history forgot, and have even been abused for their insight. We have made contact with beings from another world, another dimension. These beings hold information so old and so incredible that our ancestors called them gods. Today, we call them aliens and seek out their existence on other planets, but we seek them in the wrong places. All the great mysteries of history will now suddenly become clear, from crystal skulls to the Great Pyramid of Egypt and more. All of history will seem strange when we emerge on the other side of this grand journey we are about to take. Come with us now and discover what history forgot. In order to help us understand this, we need to begin by consulting a paper that was presented to the United Nations in 1996 by Swan. The paper and presentation was entitled Ongoing Scientific Discovery of Sensory Receptors which Account for Many Subtle Perceptions, and deals initially with the concept of modern Western science. Swan points out that our senses are limited simply to the 5 standard senses as taught in school. However, the whole purpose of the paper was to broaden this horizon and explain to the delegates that this was a false perception. There were in fact dozens of senses that science itself had discovered since the 1930s, and yet steadfastly refused to bring them into balance with the psychic and religious understanding of these receptors. Swan points out that for thousands of years, the ancient shaman, medicine man, or mystic has believed in more than 5 human senses in relation to the earth and the universe around him, and that now science was the one catching up. In his paper, Swan explained that there is now hard scientific evidence for the senses some would say are in the remit of parascience. Swan outlines 5 categories for these new senses as follows: minute chemical receptors and sensors, minute chemical electroreceptors and sensors, neural network exchanges of information in the bio-internal body substrates, bioelectromagnetic information receptors and sensors, bioinformation transfer networks at the atomic, molecular, and neurological levels. As Swan then points out, these can sound complex at first to the uninitiated, but taken simply, they outline even to the casual observer that there are many more senses than the standard 5 we currently believe in. A nice way to conceive the whole of this is to comprehend that every cell, possibly every atom in our biophysicality, is a receptor or sensor of some kind. So, we have more senses than touch, smell, taste, sight, and sound. Our whole body is full of subtle sensors and even bioinformation transfer networks, which simply put, means a method of dispersing the information around the body once received. We are a walking, talking, and communicating satellite dish that is far more complex and receptive than we ever imagined. This goes along with what many ufologists state, that they can sense beings, that they know inside themselves we have and are being visited. One of these categories in particular relates to the existence within our bodies of minute physical and chemical bioelectromagnetic receptors that interact with the information processing resources, spreading information around the body that the body is receiving. This information is constantly bombarding our bodies and being dispersed. It is being understood even at a conscious level. Take, for instance, the vomeronasal system, or nose, which picks up at a biosubliminal level the minute chemical signals of another person. This system can easily detect pheromones and hormonal signals from another person and arouse, for instance, a sexual desire, which in turn emits a similar signal. We as humans are both aware of this effect through becoming aroused and flushed, and yet unaware that we are immediately and effectively sending signals back. This effect is on a chemical level, but the chemical is being dispatched via electromagnetic means, both internally and externally. Is there any similar scientific evidence for external electromagnetic energy information? Swann was already there with this one and goes on to explain that scientists can and have measured and begun to classify the brain's electrical activity outside of the scalp. Could there really be evidence of brain activity external to the brain? This has in fact led to discoveries that bioelectric activity extends to some distance beyond the skin, which in turn has led to the discovery of bioelectric sensors not only in the skin, but in the neuropeptide activity that transmits all kinds of subtle sense information through the immune system and into the brain and back again, into the body's extremities and all its internal organs, including its surrounding biomagnetic field. Now discovered bioelectromagnetic fields extending outside the scalp and outside the skin clearly equate to the auras that many clairvoyants have specialized in seeing. Preempting this discovery in 1977, Bob Becker in Psychoenergetic Systems, Volume 2, under a paper entitled An Application of Direct Current Neural Systems to Psychic Phenomena, states, "The concept of a primitive electronic communication system in all living things can be a useful tool in understanding both normal and paranormal phenomena that have lacked a rational biological explanation. Indeed, it appears that human beings are tied to the universe in a web of electromagnetic energy." So scientists themselves believe that the universal web of electromagnetic energy could explain many paranormal phenomena. And yet society is told by those in authority that no such thing is possible, and the real facts are hidden in complicated and confusing scientific papers. Getting back to Swain's paper, he explains that the soles of your feet and the palms of your hands contain minute magnetic receptors and sensors that recognize minute and gross changes in local magnetism. The ancients understood electromagnetism in their own way and were not bound by the modern-day perceptions that this power or energy was weaker than the chemical energy of the bioform. The two go hand in hand naturally. Our ancestors knew this because they had been taught it by ancient aliens they called gods. More on that soon. Ancient structures were erected with electromagnetism in mind for long-distance communication. Why? For communication with aliens. Feng Shui and the serpent energy pathways of modern ley line hunters are truly electromagnetic paths that man understood and had the receptors to be able to read. The fact that we have receptors in our hands and feet comes as no surprise when we consider the methods used to discover these earth energies, which involves dowsing, standing on the ground, and holding special rods as an antenna extension of the body to pick up the subtle energies. But there is so much more. Swann continues with a list of the senses and receptors. Receptors in the nose, sensing systems that smell emotions and that can identify motives, sexual receptivity, antagonism, benevolence, etc. Receptors in the ear, sensing systems that detect and identify differences in pressure and electromagnetic frequencies. Skin receptors that detect balance and imbalance regarding what is external to the bio body, even external at some astonishing distances. Skin receptors that detect motion outside the body, even when the body is asleep. Directional finding and locating receptors in the endocrine and neuropeptide systems. Whole body receptors, including hair, that identify fluidic motions of horizontal, vertical, diagonal, even if not visually perceived. Skin receptors that recognize the temperament of other biological organisms. Subliminal sensory systems, which locate and identify pitch of sound. A sense of heat across great distances. A sense of frequencies and waves, either mechanical or energetic. Receptors that identify positive and negative charged particles at the atomic level. Microsystem transducing of various forms of mechanical, chemical, and electromagnetic energy into meaningful nerve impulses. Receptors that sense gravitational changes. Neurological senses for interpreting modulated electronic information by converting it into analog signals for mental storage, interpretation, and cognition. Bioelectronic receptors for sensing radiation, including X-rays, cosmic rays, infrared radiation, and ultraviolet light, all of these receptors being found in the retina of the eye. Receptors that respond to exterior electrical fields and systems. Skin receptors for sensing perceptions of bonding and antagonism. Senses for nonverbal language, communicating, or telepathy. This has now been superseded by the discovery of quantum entanglement, whereby two minds have been found to entangle at the quantum level. Combined sensing systems or neural networks for making meaning out of at least 130 identified nonverbal physical gestures and 20 basic kinds of nonverbal messages. Receptors that trigger alarm and apprehension before their sources are directly perceived. Sensing systems for registering and identifying nonverbal emotional waves. Senses and memory stores cycles of light and darkness, anticipating them with accuracy as the daily motions of the sun and moon change. Senses and response to solar and lunar rhythms, solar disruptions such as flares or sunspots, and moon-caused tidal changes, whether fluid or geophysical ones, and can sense coming earthquakes and storms. This amazing list of scientifically accepted receptors and sensors within, and indeed without the human body, is quite remarkable, and links in much of what the paranormal and ufology fraternities speak of. We must also add now a growing scientific trend towards the idea of a sense of time, which is being shown to be more than simply a perception of the mind, but also a biological and evolutionary function, even so far as to the concept of evolutionary internal device to enable mankind to predict the future. What we do have here is stark scientific reality, which appears to be verging on the edge of the world of the paranormal. In the world of the mystical etheric matter, referred to in alchemy and Eastern mysticism as the subtle matter, we have some explanation of what the ancients believed in. This etheric body was external to our own, and yet was our own. It is the energy aura and is claimed to react to different frequencies of nature because our energy is linked to that of our surroundings. In fact, where illness is present, the frequency of the etheric body is said to change color. This has been shown in Kirlian photography. The Nobel Prize-winning physicist David Bohm has actually presented some convincing scientific evidence for what he called the implement order of the holographic universe. This holographic universe is made up of this etheric body spoken of by Eastern mystics and others, and is something to which we shall return. Bohm believed that information was actually enfolded within the fabric of space and matter, or energy. This in turn actually agrees with Einstein's popular theory, E=mc², where he proposed that energy was matter and vice versa. Today, we find thousands of New Age practitioners of what is known as vibrational medicine, popularized a great deal by Dr. Richard Gerber in his book, Vibrational Medicine. This new healing technique calls upon the ancient idea of the etheric body and the subtle vibrating energy which surrounds us, encapsulates us, and is indeed within us. This in turn, and surprisingly to many, actually relates to modern scientific discoveries as outlined in SWAN's UN presentation, namely that we are receptors and sensors of this energy, and that it affects us in many ways. If we can indeed pick up this energy, then there is little wonder that it does make changes to our own bioelectromagnetic body for good and bad. Many people who have come in contact with beings from other dimensions or aliens state quite clearly that they are often bodies of light, that they sense them rather than see them. This is in fact nothing new. It was spoken of thousands of years ago, and it is where we get our angels from. Well over 1,000 years ago, Jafar al-Sadiq, a Muslim scholar, teacher, and alchemist stated, "There are some lights which, if thrown from a sick person to a healthy person, can possibly make that healthy person sick." This was al-Sadiq's way of explaining vibrational medicine. Scientists today are admitting that it is theoretically possible for disease to occur at the cellular and bimolecular level, and it is this which affects the greater body. This, it is claimed, is based upon vibration or resonance, which is termed in the world of the mystics and the scientists alike as the life force. These life forces possess electromagnetic energy which give it the vibration. It is this electromagnetism that al-Sadiq is talking about when he says lights. And he calls them lights because he could see them, and so too can many more. Society today calls them mad. Now, according to many religions, the laying on of hands to the head results in the healing process, which is now termed vibrational medicine. We have already seen that both the hands and the feet are receptors and sensors of magnetism, but the hands are also strangely on the same frequency as the brain. In this respect, we can see how this subtle energy could have ramifications for the world's ancient religions. This laying on of hands is normally part of a much wider ritual involving meditation or prayer, which has been found to turn negative frequencies into positive ones. A paper by Dr. William H. Philpott entitled "The Value of Using Negative Magnetic Energy in Diabetes Mellitus," and which refers specifically to the use of magnetism in the healing of diabetes patients, states, specifically, it is the energy of magnetism which makes biological responses possible. For years, it was customary to consider magnetism as one unit of energy. However, it has been demonstrated conclusively that magnetism is two energies that have opposite biological effects when these energies are separated. It is the balance between these two energies that governs metabolism. Magnetism is a push and pull system. The clockwise spin of a positive magnetic field pushes, and the counterclockwise spin of the negative magnetic field pulls. This can be illustrated by the energy of a moving object such as a car. The front end of a car pushes while the back end of a car pulls, yet the moving car is one unit of energy. Life energy is the balance between these two systems. Biological life has a balance. Philpott then explains how this magnetic energy has been shown to have effect. The positive magnetic pole is inflammatory invoking, and the negative magnetic pole is anti-inflammatory and inflammatory resolving. To him, It is critically important that we come to an understanding of this magnetic phenomena, especially as he has shown that using a negative magnetic field, he has controlled acid and inflammation amongst other things. Modern and ancient methods of healing also involve certain tools such as flowers, color, and crystal therapy. Dr. Philpott had discovered for himself magnetic energy can be a great healer. But with all due respect to the scientific community, this is something that the ancients across the world had already discovered. We just would not listen. So in what ways did the ancients, who seem to know things before we do, utilize magnetism and indeed electromagnetism? It is claimed by New Age healers that quartz crystal holds energy and therefore, they say, also information in a binary form. Is this true? It is. Do crystals hold energy that could be related to information? Definitely. But what kind of energy? Anthropological, any consciously programmed information and records of any kind. Would this information be as old as the crystal? Yes, and there could be new programming as well. Dr. Gebbie at the National Institute of Standards and Technology Laboratories in the United States stated, "All matter contains energy. Why should crystals be any different?" I also know that within crystals, like all matter, there are negatively charged electrons and positively charged protons. Since a force of some sort keeps them apart, despite their natural tendencies to attract each other, I can attribute to an internal energy, and one precisely described by quantum mechanics as well. The force within the crystal is balanced by energy, called a force of some sort. The light from these crystals was indeed real, but it was more than that. It was also real on another level, in that crystals help the adept generate an inner light. Crystals across the world have been used by shamans and others to induce or connect with the other world. This other world is the place where people connect with aliens, angels, and any number of other names mankind has given them over millennia. There are crystals that have entered into culture and become almost overnight enigmas. The Crystal Skulls. In The Mystery of the Crystal Skulls by Chris Morton and Carrie Louise Thomas, we find the story of the crystal skull phenomena that the establishment seemed to ignore. At the beginning of the book, we are introduced to what is known as the Mitchell-Hedges skull, or Skull of Doom. This is probably the most famous of all crystal skulls and has been seen on numerous occasions on television and elsewhere. It is a clear quartz crystal skull, perfectly human in appearance, with two holes beneath. It is made from one complete quartz crystal rock and has some peculiar properties. To quote from the book, the prismatic qualities of the crystal are such that if the sun's rays are very strong and fall at a particular angle onto the back of the skull, they are focused and condensed and appear as a bright, sharp beam of light out of the skull's eyes, nose, and mouth. The Shining Ones, beings of light, and serpent deities of the ancients were all featured as having shining or bright eyes. Could this have been a coincidence? In legend and myth, these cross associations with bright eyes and even serpents eventually seems to have come through into Egypt as the Uzayat or Uraeus snake, which adorned the brow of the pharaohs. The terms Uzayat or Uraeus means simply the eye and shows the bright, swift, powerful nature of the serpent energy. In Europe, the infamous god Balder was said to be the most beautiful of gods. He was pure radiance and light. He shone. It was said that his snowy brow, or the place where the Egyptian Uraeus would be, radiated beams of pure sunlight, which gladdened the hearts of men. In Greece, Zeus, the greatest of gods, had shining eyes, which turned every way and dealt good fortune and bad. In India, the Sun of Truth had shining eyes, and both the serpent-associated deities, Bacchus and Dionysus of the Romans and the Greeks had bright and shining eyes. In Egypt, we find that the father of all, Ptah, had shining eyes, as did Noah. And in Daniel, we hear of eyes as lamps of fire, much like in Revelation, where his eyes were as a flame of fire. We find later on in folklore that many giants have shining or burning eyes. These giants are the remnants of the Watchers from the Bible, who were original shining ones and were the original aliens that came through to Earth, created civilization, and aided in the construction of great structures. This is what the ancient texts actually tell us. Watchers, shining ones, angels, and more are all extraterrestrial beings of light. They are pure energy information. So, in myth, legend, and fable, we can find all of the relevant deities and characters with shining eyes. Could this similarity across so many gods and right through to this crystal skull with its physical shining eyes be a coincidence? Let us see if there are further clues to the truth behind the crystal skulls, and if there is any relationship between the skull and the trance state of the shining experience. The skull was said by the owner, Anna Mitchell Hedges, to have come into her possession when she was on a dig with her father at Lubentun in the 1920s and was therefore believed to be Mayan. Hewlett-Packard believed it would have taken 300 years to make the skull using conventional means, unless, of course, our ancestors had technology we have not yet discovered. In the myths of the Mayans, the shaman, when coming to the end of his life, would need to pass on information to the next shaman. In order to facilitate this, the aging shaman would place his hand on the crystal skull and impart the energy information into the skull, just like the laying on of hands. Next, the new shaman would follow suit, but this time upload the information directly through his hand into his brain. Strange how the hand is on the same frequency as the brain. In this way, the knowledge of the whole lineage of shaman would be passed on via the skull, which itself is said to hold the knowledge of the universe, just as our parascientists had suggested. All of this sounded too bizarre to be real. However, we have already learned that the human body is highly capable of receiving huge amounts of information that we are not conscious of. And we have already learned that the universe sent out information all at the same time everywhere. We also know that the ancients understood about the magnification of energy, the same energy some believe to impart information. Could it be that this information is somehow held within the quartz crystal of this skull and others, and that it could somehow be extracted by a qualified adept? We turn now to quantum entanglement. Scientists in from Beijing to the Hungarian Institute for Science and Stanford in the US and elsewhere have been working on the quantum entanglement theory for some time. The Stanford Education website gives us the following explanation of the theory. Quantum entanglement is a physical resource like energy associated with the peculiar non-classical correlations that are possible between separated quantum systems. Entanglement can be measured, transformed, and purified. A pair of quantum systems in an entangled state can be used as a quantum information channel to perform computational and cryptographic tasks that are impossible for classical systems. So, through quantum entanglement, which is like energy, two separate systems can be measured, transformed, and even, like the ancient statements of mystics from across the world, be purified. It is a method of information exchange that is non-classical, that is, not as we generally understand. In one scientific test, which has been described as a landmark experiment, scientists put two people into separate rooms and connected them up to the scientific apparatus, such as electrodes. One person is flashed 100 times with a bright light, while the other person's reactions are being monitored. Amazingly, the initial results showed beyond doubt that the emotion of the flashing lights had transferred into the other chamber and into the mind of the second person. In 1965, two pairs of identical twins under observation were found to be quantum entangled too. As one twin closed their eye, the alpha waves in the brain were stimulated, and amazingly, this same stimulation of the alpha waves was noted at exactly the same time in the opposite twin. Scientists have said that the effect is brought about via quantum entanglement, and they are even now researching how this amazing particle effect can be used in communication devices and computers. It is a complex science, and recently scientists actually photographed particles entangling for the very first time, proving the existence of quantum entanglement beyond doubt. So we know that via the modern discovery of the perfectly scientific quantum entanglement, humans were capable of sending and receiving some form of information, human to human or even human to alien. Now, with the added evidence of human sensors and receptors, let alone crystal magnification and ordering of energy information, it is starting to look perfectly possible. Added to this, the evidence that crystals could actually hold energy and information, and that the resonant frequencies were similar to our own when in the trance state. We are slowly coming around to the idea that this may indeed be possible. The Mitchell-Hedges skull had been tested by Hewlett-Packard in the 1970s, which showed that the skull was piezoelectric, a kind of quartz used today in modern electronics and quantum computing. Piezo is a Greek word which means to squeeze, and electros means simply to get electricity from. Therefore, the term piezoelectric simply means that it will produce electric current if squeezed. This is due to an inherent silicon dioxide found within the quartz crystal, which gives a negative and positive polarity, which in the case of the Mitchell-Hedges skull runs vertically like a battery, or indeed like our own spine. Applying electricity to such a substance actually makes it change shape. The two holes found beneath the skull are therefore some kind of battery antenna. It was in fact connected to something else now lost. Hewlett-Packard found that light entering the skull not only passes along the optical axis, but also rotates as it travels, like a serpent running up a pole. This crystal skull was actually shown to hold an amazing electrical energy, but more than that, it actually controlled the oscillation at a constant frequency. Now, across the world, there are literally thousands, if not millions, of individuals who actually believe this skull to be a device to enter the other world, a world occupied by the minds of the ancients and beings of the other world. It is therefore an ancient knowledge bank or direct route to the infamous Akashic records. In other words, more grounded. Could this and other crystals be ancient computer-like storage devices, which utilizes the natural electrical and magnetic energy within to store information that can be retrieved by the receptors that scientists are today admitting exists, or even a route to revealing the source center of existence? The chances seem to be stacking up in favor of either of these assumptions. To quote from Morton and Thomas's book, when we come in contact with a piezoelectric quartz crystal, such as the crystal skull, the electromagnetic energy waves we produce are received by the quartz. The crystal then starts oscillating and amplifying these signals and rebroadcasts them in modified form back into the atmosphere, where they are picked up again by the cells of the body. In effect, the quartz crystal modifies and amplifies our own electromagnetic waves and relays them back to us. So, in the process, these waves of energy information become stronger and clearer, As we had just discovered, raw piezoelectric quartz is certainly renowned as a natural electronic oscillator or resonator or amplifier. This oscillation or resonance is perfectly in tune with the frequencies of the human body and indeed the earth. It seems then that the knowledge of the ancients could very well be held within the ancient crystal artifacts of the globe, or even that they magnify the quasi-quantum vacuum field where the information is stored. And all the time, it is being ignored or hidden by modern science. But science at least helps us to understand how this effect is possible. It seems that the now infamous pineal gland is responsible for the receptive side of this amazing feat of nature. With its inbuilt magnetite or iron oxide, the pineal organ is responsible in birds for location finding, just as it is in us. The magnetite in the gland picks up the supposedly subtle electromagnetic current of the earth and gives the subconscious brain a location and bearing. This in itself links to the peculiar head shaping seen in ancient times known as trepanning. In Mesoamerica, archaeologists have discovered the particular shaping of heads to affect a sloping brow via tying planks of wood to the head from birth. This has the effect of flattening out the pineal organ to be even more receptive, like a satellite dish. No wonder that these strange-headed people from across the world were called Shining Ones and Serpent Deities. They were in fact in touch with the other world or ancient knowledge system. Wise, all-knowing beings of light from another world. Amazing, all of this relates to the greatest mysteries, the Great Pyramid. Right now, you are probably wondering how any of this can relate to the Great Pyramid in Giza. The pyramid was once known as the Gateway, and you may now realize where this is leading. Morton and Thomas had already pointed out in their book that the infamous Teotihuacan Temple complex was in the same layout as the pyramid complex at Giza, the Orion correlation theory. This is where two pyramids are in line, with a third slightly off, just like Orion's belt in the sky. Why this should be seen in Egypt and South America, nobody knows. However, the ancient priesthood known as the Shining Ones were responsible for many of the similarities seen around the world because they traveled extensively. These same Shining Ones were the adepts of the trance, and it would be, therefore, these same people who developed the use of crystals as an aid to the deeper knowledge gained through the bioelectromagnetic energy information system. These Shining Ones claim to have gained their special knowledge from their brethren, the beings of light from the other world. The Aztecs and Mayans, amongst others, believed strongly that the priests held their secrets within the mountains, meaning pyramids, and of course the otherworld womb, which is nothing other than the otherworld itself. The word pyramid means fire in the middle or fire mountain. This, of course, would be an allusion to the fire of trance. In fact, the pyramid was a superconductor of electromagnetic energy which synchronized with our human resonance and aided the oncoming of the trance state. It boosted the internal enlightenment and connection to the other world. But what was different here and now was that it was looking like it could also be a gateway to ancient information, held possibly in or via the crystal, and more importantly here, quartz. Above the king's chamber is a layer of granite blocks brought hundreds of miles to this particular site. The majority of the pyramid is limestone. This is important. Limestone is made up of calcium and magnesium carbonate. Calcium carbonate is electromagnetically anisotropic. It is an excellent receiver of electromagnetic waves. Strangely, it also becomes luminescent when rubbed, giving rise to the phrase limelight. The majority of granite is made up of quartz, which we have found to be piezoelectric and is an excellent converter of electromagnetic waves. Basically, by putting large granite blocks above the king's chamber, it became in fact a massive crystal skull-type receiver. It could also be conjectured that it would transmit information as well, given sufficient energy resources, such as making loud noises. The Great Pyramid, as a crystal skull, could theoretically receive information, but from where? It is an established fact that pyramids and temples in South America were fashioned to enable the carrying of sound waves. For instance, at Tulum in the Yucatan, the temple gives a crystal clear whistle or howl when the wind blows through it, a sound that is magnified. At Tikal, the Mayan temple pyramid shows a clear projection of sound as the speaker from the top of the pyramid can be heard from great distances. The same is true at various other temples. These sounds are waves, and structures have been created by these ancient people to carry these waves over long distances. Adding to that, these sound waves were more than just mere noises. These were special ritualized and deeply religious sounds being carried across the expanse. Could it not be possible that they could have created also a device such as the Great and notably Central Pyramid in Egypt to be a massive communication device of ritualized, internally esoteric and religious information from the other world? There are yet more strange coincidences, however, regarding quartz and the pyramid. Quartz grows in a particular geometric pattern, as do all crystals. In this instance, though, quartz grows in the form of a triangle or pyramid with an angle of 51.43 degrees, the same as the outer walls of the Great Pyramid. Could this too be a coincidence? Or were the ancients matching the angles of this great communicating crystal? Amazingly, this very angle is a natural angle that can be created with the use of a circle and a line. It was the method used by architects of sacred geometrical buildings to square the circle, and it produced an almost 52-degree. Man, it seems, discovered or was given these wondrous and incredible natural mathematical phenomena and made them real and physical. If there were going to be any physical construction that would aid the quantum communication that we in the modern age have neglected, then it would have a magnificent mathematical pattern. Quartz crystal begins its life deep within the earth from hot vapor, which is a supersaturated solution of silicon dioxide. As it cools, a unit cell of quartz forms around a nucleated seed in the same way that an oyster forms. It is a matrix created around a seed point. The forming atoms and bonding are laid down where there is most energy. The molecules adhering to the base silicon matrix. Made up as a tetrahedron-shaped molecule, it is now composed of 4 atoms of oxygen with 1 silicon atom suspended within. This primary cell unit now attracts other silicon dioxide molecules, and over time, trillions of these cells link together in a spiraling motion, layer upon layer, until the crystal is made. The crystal is a known quantum converter that is able to transmit energy in a magnified state, and this energy can easily be absorbed or received by biological matter, such as the human body. So, in conclusion, the crystal is formed via a serpentine spiraling motion and is a known quantum converter transmitting energy information at a magnified rate. Simply amazing. So, that is a little standard science behind quartz. But is there any more scientific information that relates to our study? An article that appeared in Nature magazine in January 2002 by Philip Ball entitled "Solid Stops Light" has the answer. Bill shows how scientists had managed to bring light to a complete standstill inside a crystal. Apparently, the trick could be used to store information in a quantum computer. Now, thousands of years later, modern man is using crystals to create quantum computers. Our ancestors got there first. Quartz crystal is made up of lattice work of silicon and oxygen atoms, which surround a relatively open space. It is this open space that can be compressed or squeezed and expanded with certain stimuli. This same stimulus also makes the crystal vibrate or sing. These vibrations make waves, which human receptors pick up and convert back to binary information. This means that vibratory information of energy of different frequencies can be stored, like the light that came to a standstill inside the empty space. These crystals do much more, though. They also amplify the energy like temples magnifying sound. By moving them, applying pressure, or other stimuli, such as touch, these crystals can be forced to offer up their inhaled information energy, or possibly that of the holographic universe to which all things are connected, including the wave particles within the crystal. Marcel Vogel, a scientist working on computer chips, noticed while observing certain liquid crystals through a high-powered microscope that when he projected certain thoughts into the liquid, just before it turned to solid, it would shape itself into the approximate shape of his visualized thoughts. Indeed, he has even stated his belief that these quartz chips can be programmed by the mind alone, as in fact, thoughts are simply energy waves in themselves. If these crystals could read the mind of a scientist in such a way, surely they can also read the mind of one who was an adept and who had a large or malformed pineal organ, such as those serpent people of South America, Malta, and elsewhere. The difficulty for ordinary people, we are told, is that we cannot focus sufficiently well or for long enough. Western metaphysical beliefs actually state that when the thalamus gland is stimulated, the subconscious seems to yield more information, and according to many psychics, it is with the aid of the crystal, or indeed the magnifying effect of the pyramid, which makes it possible for this energy information to be picked up by ordinary people. But the pyramid and the crystals were there simply for the adepts who had already trained extensively for the process. This history relates to us that crystals are to be found in the correct context in alchemy, witchcraft, and general magic, as well as being discovered at various prehistoric sites around the world in ritualistic locations or contexts. The Indians of both North and South America are intricately linked through culture and history. They have their own belief in the life that resides in the crystal. To them, the spirits held within the crystal can materialize and become visible, and some even feed the crystal's liquids. These spirits within the crystals are the beings of light, or aliens being seen by adepts through these amazing communication devices. These forms may be what are known as biophotons that are being magnified by the crystal, or alternatively, they could be electromagnetic energy waves seen by adepts who are drug-induced or in a meditative state. In fact, a certain Harry Oldfield in Middlesex, England, discovered something quite amazing when using a Kirlian photography technique. Kirlian photography measures electromagnetic energy emitted by a given body, and through it, alternative medical practitioners are able to see negative points in the body which need help. These negatives come up as different colors on the photograph, and the practitioner can then use crystals or other tools to balance out the energy. At least that's the claim. It has, goes the claim, been an extremely effective tool in the medical armory, even though orthodox medicine derides its use. Some doctors, even within the orthodox world, however, do sign up to its methods, while others are enthusiastic individuals who recognize its importance. One day, when using Kirlian photography on a female patient who was holding a crystal, Oldfield, a teacher, later noticed a white serpent shape emerging from the crystal. Although Oldfield insists on calling this peculiar phenomena, which he has many images of now, an entity, it may be that this is purely the serpentine energy wave of electromagnetism seen here visually, as the shaman of the world claimed to be able to see it. Another interesting effect of holding a crystal while using Kirlian photography is that the subtle energy field of the body is double. Marcel Vogel also found that crystals affected the molecular structure of water. If we move this slightly, we find that over 70% of our own body is made up of water, so crystals could indeed have even more profound effect upon our body than previously thought. If we also take into consideration that some believe the coffer in the Great Pyramid was a flotation tank, or that the chambers above created by the granite blocks contained water, then we can see how an extra magnification effect may have been taking place. It seems the beauty of the crystal is in its innate regulatory effects and ability to hold information in order. This order is thought, therefore, to aid the balancing and order of the human subtle energy, collecting the energy and magnifying it back in a balanced state. In fact, the Earth is thought to be made up of 40% quartz crystal and may be an aid to the thermodynamic balance we exist in on the macro scale. The Great Pyramid, in fact, has all of these fundamental constituent parts, such as water, quartz, and limestone. There are, in fact, many claims made about pyramids, such as the aid concentration, heighten psychic energy, sharpen razors, purify water, aid in the mummification process, keep foods fresh, increase the growth rate of plants, and promote healing. There is an ancient structural Hindu design which dates back to 3000 BC, supposedly before the building of the Great Pyramid, called the yantra. This amazing image is both two-dimensional and three-dimensional and can be a drawn mandala or a building. It incorporates just about every geometric pattern possible, but most amazing is the fact that the base angle of the yantra is 51.5032 degrees, virtually the same as the Great Pyramid and the triangular structure of the quartz crystal. The idea of the yantra is to balance and clear the negative energy that is in us and around us, whether we meditate upon the form or actually stand within it. The term simply means wealth bringer and is a reference to the fact that in China and India, it was used by the elite to bring good luck and prosperity, and is also linked to the goddess Lakshmi, who is also the goddess of wealth. Today, yantras are produced in quartz crystal, as it is believed that this doubles the power of the shape and the crystal. Obviously, nobody has scientifically tested the results, but Kirlian photography has shown an incredible aura. What else did the ancients really know? And how did they discover the secrets? They understood that they could use their natural tools to communicate information and to heal the sick. They understood and were closer to nature than we can possibly imagine. We should therefore give them the respect their ancient knowledge deserves and not close our orthodox eyes to the possibilities that are now open to us. But to come to a true conclusion, we have to revisit the Great Pyramid because it truly holds the secrets of history. According to the standard Orthodox Egyptology, the pyramid complex on Giza Plateau are funerary structures of the three pharaohs from the 4th dynasty, approximately 2575 to 2465 BC. However, Arthur Miroslav Werner, writing in The Pyramid, stated, "To suppose that the pyramids only function in ancient Egypt was as a royal tomb would be an oversimplification. This is now more true than ever. And if the Great Pyramid was built solely for burial purposes of the given King Khufu, then it was and will remain an unprecedented farce. It is simply unimaginable that so much effort be placed into building a structure of such gargantuan proportions, with such amazing astronomical alignments, with such perfect precision, by thousands of human souls, all for the one purpose of burying their God-King. In all the pyramids in Egypt, not one has delivered the full body of a pharaoh. There have been parts, a supposed mummified foot at Djoser, fragments of a mummy in the pyramid of Unas and Pepi, an arm and shoulder at Teti, and a skeleton of a young woman in the coffer of the pyramid of Menkuri. but never a full mummified body of a pharaoh that was supposed to be buried within. The Egyptologists claim that this was due to the tombs having been raided over the vast period of time. This may be true, but alternatively, it may be that the pyramids were used for other purposes as well or instead of. These body parts discovered within the pyramids may be pharaonic remains, but they could just easily be more modern burials placed within the pyramids at a later date. A similar thing is found in the burial mounds of Europe and elsewhere. Here, the burial mounds, as sacred images of the primordial mound or world mountain, were gateways to the other world, and for centuries, progressive generations would cut into them and make fresh burials. This did not take away the purpose or meaning of the mounds as gateways to the other world. In fact, this use utilized the main purpose. Were these great feats of human ingenuity and skill just for the purpose of encasing the carcass of one man? No. In fact, if they were built for just one man, then why did Amenemhet III have two pyramids built? One at Dashur, which contained his granite coffer, and one at Hawara with quartzite coffer. The one unifying element of these two pyramids was the materials used for the coffers, granite and quartz, which, as we have seen, are highly important to the whole gateway scenario. It is claimed that one of these was a cenotaph, which comes from the Greek kenotaphion, meaning empty tomb. Of course, this is even more remarkable that a tomb should be built empty, and the reason given by Egyptologists is simply that it would confuse the tomb raiders. The only so-called evidence that the Great Pyramid was built for Khufu is scant to say the least. Herodotus, the infamous Roman historian, visited the pyramids in 443 BC and claimed that Khufu was buried underneath the pyramid, not in it. This was 2,000 years after the supposed event. We simply cannot trust what we read today in our newspapers, let alone believe Herodotus and his interpretation of what he was led to believe. The next piece of evidence is extremely controversial, as it relies upon some difficult to see, let alone decipher inscriptions on a funerary complex near the Great Pyramid, claiming to be in the time of Khufu. Again, and lastly, in the pyramid itself, the hieroglyphic symbol for Khufu himself as a quarry mark was discovered by archaeologist Richard Howard Weiss, who is now believed to have forged it under pressure of competition from contemporary foreign archaeologists, namely the Italian Caviglia. So, we are left with an inscription near the pyramid, a fake hieroglyphic, and 2,500-year-old text based upon hearsay. This is hardly evidence for it to be the burial place of Khufu, let alone for anything else. Although it is perfectly possible that Khufu was buried at this special place and that later a pyramid was constructed, the pyramid, however, remains an enigma, regardless of what we are led to believe. This unproven nonsense has pervaded Egyptology ever since, regardless of any other reason for the existence of the pyramids. Now we know the other reason. The Great Pyramid of Giza is to be found at the center of the Earth's landmass. It is 30 degrees north, 31 degrees east, central both north-south and east-west. It is in the perfect location at the center for collecting the Earth energy and magnifying it. To add to this, the two materials used were also perfect. But first, we need to take a foray into the world of Tesla to understand more. Nikola Tesla was an eccentric and brilliant inventor who managed to harness the alternating current we use today, as well as radio, fluorescent lighting, and much more. Tesla believed he could send waves of electricity directly to our homes through the earth and air without the use of wires and without harming anybody along the way, by simply applying a subtle push-pull resonator. In 1901, Tesla said, "My next step was to use the Earth itself as the medium for conducting the currents, and he did. Tesla successfully sent electricity 26 miles and extracted it using a magnifying receiver. This is an incredible thought that energy waves, even extremely low frequency waves, could be sent around the globe, and then with a magnifying receiver, they could be picked up and understood or used. In fact, Tesla even tuned in his pyramid-shaped magnifying transmitter to the resonance of the Earth and found that his co-workers were becoming ill with symptoms of extreme tensions of the nerves. Tesla discovered that the Earth was found to be literally alive with electrical vibrations, and soon I was deeply absorbed in this interesting investigation. Tesla continued and revealed his feelings. My first observations positively terrified me, as there was present in them something mysterious, not to say supernatural. He said, "It was some time afterward when the thought flashed upon my mind that the disturbances I had observed might be due to an intelligent control." It would be many years later that Schumann would discover the resonance of the Earth and prove that it had its own wave-particle pattern and that it can be altered by the surrounding universe, the collective superconsciousness, and any number of other external influences. How does it do this? The chaotic beginnings of the Big Bang are still very much in the realms of theory. And there is another theory which goes that the universe is a standing wave being pushed and pulled by some impulse such as thought. This impulse, like our thoughts, which seem to create wave particles, pushes and pulls the standing wave, which then does the same to its neighbor. And hey, presto, light can travel across the universe as a wave cascade without loss of energy, a perpetual motion. Our thoughts affect the surrounding standing wave in no different manner. Maybe what Tesla had discovered in these vibrations that were disturbances and seemed to have intelligent control were really the living wave matter particles of us, all pushing at the boundaries of an expanding universe. Billions of thoughts creating energy push and pull. Tesla had discovered intelligent signals by pure accident and stated the case. Unfortunately, through circumstances outside of his own control, he never did get around to seriously working on the phenomena, and nobody since him has had the intelligence or will to see the issue through. What Tesla discovered, however, was found within the ELF field, the low-frequency bandwidths. Many people are out there, not least of whom are SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, looking on the megahertz level when they should be redirecting their search back down to Earth and to the extremely low frequency before the mobile phone masks completely engulf us. Tesla's receivers were great towers with pyramids on top, and Tesla's insistence that to be at the center of the landmass would be far more beneficial to the purpose of the machinery. So, Tesla discovered the resonance of the Earth, and that the resonance had intelligent attributes. The resonance of the Earth is in the same 0.40 Hertz as the human mind, the same mind which is constantly emitting signals into the environment around it. These signals are much more than just waves. They are also particles. They are therefore matter. We see stars in the sky, little lights flickering billions of light years away. Many of these lights are no longer there. They are stars that have died, and yet we still see the light. This light we know now to be wave matter particle. We know it is the continued life of that star. We ourselves, as part and parcel of the whole universal constants and laws of chaos and order, are nothing different to those stars. We are also putting out signals, which will continue as wave matter particles even after we have died. These signals are ELF signals and are caught up within the Schumann resonance 60 kilometers above the Earth and creating a whole. Are these signals of our spirits? Are these the signals we ourselves are placing into the great Akashic collective superconsciousness? Are the beings of light a great many people see and call alien and angel really living wave particle memories of ancients? Do these wave particles that Tesla discovered represent the sum of mankind and indeed all life on Earth? Is Gaia, the Mother Earth, truly alive and conscious as the collective mind? Amazingly, Tesla described these electromagnetic signals as stationary parallel circles forming on the surface of the Earth. These are no different to the circles mankind has been perceiving and materializing here on the Earth for thousands of years as stone circles, rock art, and all manner of mysterious artifacts. And where would the most powerful collective electromagnetic current collect other than at the center of the landmass? As the great and mystical saying, OM turns from a circle into a square as it reaches M, so too this great collection of human thought and quantum emotion turns into a square base at the Great Pyramid in Giza. So, the Great Pyramid at the center of the Earth's landmass, and as a perfect shape for receiving the resonance of the Earth, simply must have a better reason for existing than as a large coffin for one man. Let's break it all down and move through the various elements one piece at a time. The Great Pyramid is made up of mainly solid mass, with the interior spaces being the descending and ascending passages. The Grand Gallery, a subterranean chamber, another chamber unnamed, and the King and Queen's chambers. The King's chambers were so named by Arabs who attempted to raid the tomb, but found it empty. It is 10.46 meters east to west, 5.23 meters north to south, and 5.81 meters high. This is an architectural three-dimensional representation of the golden mean, or phi, a sacred geometry well before Pythagoras. The sides of the Great Pyramid line up almost exactly with the cardinal points on the compass, with an accuracy that would defy today's builders, leaving a fifth point on top. The dimensions of the Earth's size and shape can be calculated using the dimensions of the pyramid, it being a scale model of the hemisphere with information on the latitude and longitude of the Earth. The very foundations of the pyramid also defy modern building techniques, as it rests perfectly level with not one corner of the base more than 13 millimeters higher or lower than the others. When we remember that the base covers 13 acres, we can suddenly understand just how this was an incredible feat of human engineering, if indeed its construction was not in fact aided by the beings of light. The King's Chamber is made up of solid red granite transported from the quarries of the Aswan 600 miles away. There has to be a better reason for the ancient Egyptians to have undertook such a task, transporting at least 50 tons of red granite for such a huge distance, than simply to line a chamber. Well, we have already discussed the unique properties of granite, and so we should be able to now grasp the importance of this material. However, there were more interesting uses of granite in the pyramid. In the chamber itself, there is a coffer thought by Egyptologists to be the remains of Khufu's sarcophagus. Nothing was ever found in the coffer, neither was there a lid. It is too big to take out the corridor leading to and from it, indicating that it must have been laid inside as the building was erected around it, which is opposite to the funerary custom of the period. There is not the slightest piece of evidence to suggest that Khufu be ever laid to rest in this 3-ton granite container. There is nothing, not even any funerary implements or embalming materials, not a scrap. And yet, short of any other ideas, the orthodox situation remains that a building with 2.3 million blocks weighing between 2.5 and 50 tons each of perfect size and orientation was built for one man to be buried within. To add to this, not one of the 4th dynasty pharaohs put their names upon the pyramids supposedly built for them, whereas from the 5th dynasty onwards, official inscriptions are in the thousands. So what is the truth of the Great Pyramid? There are legends and traditions that claim the king's chamber to be a place of initiation. There are also many stories of individuals who felt peculiar presences or had mystical experiences within the chamber. There is also the tradition that Napoleon himself actually refused to express what happened to him in that enigmatic place, saying, "You would not believe me if I told you." According to these modern popular folktales, the coffer itself is the center of the process or energy vortex. Writer C. Dunn, in his book, The Giza Power Plant, Technologies of Ancient Egypt, goes so far as to say the Great Pyramid was a huge geomechanical power plant that responds to the Earth's vibrations or resonance and transforms it into energy. Dunn conjectured that the geometric and physical design of the chamber inside the pyramid turned it into a large transducer and has produced a highly scientific analysis of the subject. So there is now scientific experimentation behind these folktales, as we shall see, but with a very different purpose. In the 1920s, Antoine Bovis discovered that the heat and humidity of the king's chamber reduced the decay rate of dead animals. Bovis went on to construct a small-scale pyramid and oriented it in the same fashion. He placed a dead cat inside and found the result to be the same. Following this, in the 1960s, U.S. and Czech researchers repeated the process and achieved the same results. In the ancient Egyptian language of Comedian, the pyramid was known as Perneter, which can be translated in two ways: house of nature, or more importantly, the house of energy. Remarkably, like pyramid, which means fire in the middle, it is interesting, of course, to note that nature and energy are interchangeable in this way, indicating that the comedians truly saw energy as from nature itself. Not to mention that the word netter also means neutral, which is the position one has to be in to gain entry into the other world. Another title, of course, for the Giza area is Rastal, which means gateway and is sacred to Osiris and his progenitor Sokar, the god of the underworld. In the book of Amduet, Sokar inhabits a place of the dead that even Ra, the sun god, cannot access. This is therefore a place of darkness. According to Reginald Aubrey Fessenden, author of The Deluged Civilization of the Caucasus Isthmus, the term Rastal is again a literal translation of Ikur or Akur, meaning the great mountain or great house. These appellations make obvious reference to the Great Pyramid, which could be referred to as the Great House and the Great Mountain. These places were home to the Aku, or Shining Ones. The Aku were a shadowy brotherhood, an enlightened and highly intelligent group of individuals who seemed to have understood all of the sciences associated with mathematics, astronomy, physiology, and metaphysics, and had encoded their knowledge in certain monuments and buildings, one of them being the Great Pyramid of Giza. These were the very originators of the deities such as Thoth and Hermes, who would enter the world of secret societies and become all-important. So why would all three meanings of the Giza area and pyramid and the myths relate to what we have discovered, if not for the reason that what we have discovered is correct? And why would the people associated with this area be deemed to be special, bright, or shining people, if not for their seeming ability to access the illumination and hence go through the Rastal or gateway? With the use of huge quantities of granite encasing the king's chamber, let alone the 5 huge granite blocks which rest above the king's chamber, and for which Egyptologists have no reason, we have here a kind of peculiar resonating magnification machine tuned into the human mind. But what is the machine for? The only thing found in the coffer was salt. This was not from embalming, as there never was a body in the pyramid. We have seen how water was the final gateway. One must pass through it within the deep recesses of the cave in order to enter the other world. Well, today we have stolen an ancient concept, flotation tanks, and salt is the mineral used to help us float. So, the individual resting in this perfect sacred geometric coffer with internal dimensions to match the Ark of Covenant would be in total blackness within the fire in the middle, situated in the gateway of Giza. This great mountain of limestone and granite containing huge quantities of quartz, which when vibrated gives an electrical and magnetic energy, which has been shown to resonate at the same level as our minds, and the earth actually entrains our minds to those of the resonance of the collective superconsciousness. We tap in on a profound level. But much more than this may be, as the shaman the world over have claimed, that by using this powerful superconductor of the superconsciousness, the ancient priests of even Khufu himself could enter the gateway to the other world and actually control elements on the other side. These elements would be subatomic energy particles perceived in the mind's eye via resonating at the same quantum level as the earth. To be conscious of the unconscious but perfectly natural world. To be conscious of the world of subatomic particles which make up everything. To actually alter these energies through our own thoughts. Ancient beings of light reside just over the horizon. We just need to open our eyes to their existence.